There's the record button. All right. Hey, everyone. This is Dan with the Spiritual Underground podcast. As always, I am your guest here. If you're just coming across this podcast, it's primarily 12-step recovery based podcast. Although I do explore and interview people who might fall under the category of enlarging your spiritual life. There's a lot of things that in my mind kind of fall under step 11 in order to continue to grow. I think that's a requirement as the way I read this book. And so we talk to some of those people too. 12-Step Spiritual Recovery is a book by James Christopher Cohn. It is the 12 steps for anyone and everyone. Here in Louisville, Kentucky, we have some groups going on, some on Zoom, some live, where you no longer have to be an addict or an alcoholic or something of that nature to be able to come and harness the power of these 12-step tools. It's just, man, it's a bright spot in my life. I love, this is what I do. You guys know, I handyman and I woodwork to pay the bills, so that I can come carry this message, and doing it to people who maybe we would call normal people, the people who don't have a spiritual malady that's like a defining one, like an alcoholic or an addict. Their lives change dramatically too when they work this program, and it's just so cool. So if you're interested in that, you can contact me at dan@spiritualunderground.org, and the book 12-Step Spiritual Recovery is available on Amazon. So we'll get to business today. You know, my sobriety date is January the 1st, 2015. Late in 2014, I was in, I had been caught. I was backed against the corner and I didn't know what to do or where to go. And I had some people around me offering me 12-step solution. Well, of course, at that point in time, I was not anywhere near ready, and I couldn't hear them. But late in 2014, two voices entered my life, and one of those is my current sponsor, and the author of that 12-step spiritual recovery book. And another one, I was working with the fella. Matter of fact, I called him up this morning just to see how he was doing, and he gave me a link and said, "Listen to this guy." And I listened to it, and it for whatever reason, that frequency hit my eardrums in the way that caught my attention. You know, he talked about things like getting drunk by accident, getting drunk by mistake. Like he said, you know, if I got what I really want, what I really want is the rest of my life off with pay. And one of my favorite lines that I use all the time now out of the book, and it's one of my favorite ones, is sometimes he may tell the truth. And how big a swath that takes through this stuff, because when I'm working with a new guy, I can just remember that line. I do things like exchange 5th steps today. One of my favorite things to do with a new guy, when he comes up to me and asks me for my phone number, I like to look at him and say, "No, but I will exchange phone numbers with you." And we get our phones out and we put our names and our numbers and our first and last names in the phones. But where he really hooked me was when he started talking about catching smallmouth bass in a river out of a canoe. And then I was hooked. So the speaker I'm talking about is Scott Lee. There's nobody that has had a bigger impact. Everybody that's in my circle around here knows how many times I give credit to where I've heard a particular line or a particular philosophy here. And Scott Lee's been the one that gets most of those calls. How you doing, Scott?
Just grand. Thanks a lot, Dan.
Good deal. I think you need to get a little closer to that microphone again. I think you somehow got away. So as with all my guests, I always start out by asking them the sobriety date. That is the most important day in my life. It's I was on the beginning of a rebirth process. So what was yours?
June 28th, 1984. I just picked up a 38-year chip.
Yeah, super
That's
cool.
a long time for a guy that only agreed to 28 days.
Yeah, right. No doubt. Yeah. Little did we know, you know, and that's the way I feel about this too. You know, I had no idea what I was getting tricked into here. And I almost had to be tricked in order to come. I've listened to your story so many times. I listened to that 5-hour, there's one called Promises, Prayers, or maybe it's Prayers and Promises and Self-Forgiveness. And it was an anchor for my recovery. I would go to sleep listening to it one night, as crazy as this sounds, one night, and maybe more than once, but I remember one time in particular, you entered my dream. And I went into a state where I had no idea what you looked like. This is really up until a couple of days ago, I had no idea of a visual of you. But I was following some man around that had Scott Lee's voice and was talking recovery. And we were following you around in a mall. And I remember sitting down at the food court and we got our food. And for some reason, I woke up right then and I wanted to go back to sleep and get back into that dream. But, that's one of the things you can never seem to do is get that bookmarked. Today, I just thought we'd talk about some stuff. I know you have a few things you do. I love the way that you pull through this book. I always have one within reach. This is the one I got sober on. There's two more in a pile over there. Yeah. That blue book has been so important to me. And quickly, I'm going to say that I don't know what I'm doing. All I've known is what I've been taught. And one of the things that I've been taught, and I believe that there's that of the divine type divine properties that are in this, and the way that it changes every time you read it. I remember you called it wet ink at some point, and things in here will change their meaning over time. And I think a book would need to be, I'm not sure a human could do that on purpose, not all on his own. What's some of your, I'd like to hear a little bit about like some of the favorite stuff you have out of there.
Sure. Well, you've put me in mind of one of the great truths that all spiritual literature is alive.
Yeah, there you go.
And it can be different when you read it again. And the reason is because you read it with new eyes.
Yeah.
And my spiritual eyes, if I continue to do this, continue to get clearer. Yeah, I like to run through some of the things that I grossly misunderstood my first whatever period of time, some of them pretty far into it.
Yeah, that's one of my things I say is if I knew I was going to be telling this story so often, I'd have kept a better track, because I don't really remember the chronology. And it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I'm working in the 5th edition. That's what one of my sponsees says. Yeah, because he says there's new stuff in it. He's read 4. There's stuff in here that wasn't in it when he read it. So it's got to be a 5th edition. Page 3 in Bill's story. One of the 2 or 3 most misunderstood. I'm going to do the 5, I think, most misunderstood lines in the book.
Okay.
This is a paragraph begins near the bottom of the page. My drinking assumed more serious proportions, continuing all day and almost every night. The remonstrances of my friends terminated in a R-O-W. The word's pronounced row.
Row.
Row. And it means quarrel or argument. You have to dig into the dictionary to find it. It's interesting. I just listened to Lorna Kay. If you've never heard her, don't go to bed tonight without listening to Lorna. And she's British, and she used the word row. And I've got a friend in Scotland who he and I were talking about. He says, oh yeah, they use the term all the time. We don't use it over here. Most people read row and it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me.
So row. The next one is on page 66. Again, one of the absolute most misunderstood lines in the entire book. Paragraph begins halfway down the page on 66. If we were to live, we had to be free of anger. So this is really only for the people that want to live. Everybody else can take a short break.
Right.
The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. About the time this book was being written, an advertising executive on Madison Avenue named Osborne wrote a book. And in it, he described something he used with his team to write an ad. It was a technique. They'd sit around a table and you'd kick out an idea, and that'd make me think of something, somebody else will think of something, somebody else think, and then somebody else come up with what we used. He labeled his process brainstorming.
Yeah.
It was made famous by Walt Disney. Most people know that's how they wrote Mickey Mouse cartoons.
Yeah.
It has absolutely nothing to do with the word brainstorm written on this page. I dug out a 1930s dictionary, looked up brainstorm. It said transient, violent mental outburst. That's rage.
Rage.
So brainstorm is synonymous with rage. So if you think about it and put it in context, there are 2 kinds of anger. There's the grouch or the slow burn. And the brainstorm, rage, the detonation.
Yeah. Yep. That is good.
Easily misunderstood. Another one is on page 77, second line, third line. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be maximum service to God, to be about it. So clearly, it's not my purpose to be of maximum service. I have no idea how to do that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't know which way to turn out of the driveway to do that. I have no idea. To fit myself to be maximum service, I know how to do that. You've taught me that. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, attending meetings, sponsoring, being sponsored, taking meetings in the gated communities. That's a jail, you know.
Yeah.
And treatment centers, letting people in traffic, saying please and thank you. I do the things that fit me to be a maximum service.
Yeah.
I have no idea what maximum service is. The master craftsman reaches for the best tool laying the closest to his hand.
Yeah.
My job is to be the best tool I can be and reside as close to the master's hand as I can. And then he uses me. I don't need to worry about what maximum service is. I have no idea.
Right. And it so happens so much is that I've heard you say this, and I didn't know what it meant until I experienced it, that things will come upon in my life and words will come out of my mouth that I didn't know they weren't mine. You know,
Yeah,
stuff
my
comes
buddy-
out and I do things that don't, it's like out of body kind of a thing. And it's always towards the good too.
Joe Krogan calls a postcard from God. Dear Scott, you must be doing something right or we couldn't have done this one. We got your back, love God. You know, really that simple. Really that simple. I had one not too long ago. I got a newcomer. He's sober a couple of years. I just started working on him and got him into step 4, and he was doing the prayers between the 3rd and 4th column, which is where the magic is in step 4. Step 4, there's some writing involved, but it doesn't do much good. The observations and prayers are life-changing. And he completed them. He says, I can pray for everybody on my list, good stuff, and mean it. I said, great, we're going to move on. He says, no. He says, I'm afraid they might come back or I might get some new ones. I said, and I heard myself say this, quit solving problems you don't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now that ought to be on the wall next to Easy Does It.
It should be.
I had another one not too long ago. A guy, sponsor's got a lot of time. We're chatting. He's this guy in my home group. And I heard myself say, isn't part of our assignment to learn to love the unlovable? And he and I both said, wow. But see, I can't close my mind on a spiritual concept. If I close my mind on one, that's as far as it's going.
Yeah.
So I always try to hold on to old ideas. I have a definition of old ideas. Everything I learned through noon yesterday.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
So I can't, if I close my mind on that, I can't build on it.
Right.
This is the building on it so far. I have times when I'm unlovable. And that's when I need you to love me the most. I don't need you to judge me. I'm doing that.
Right. That's covered.
It's when I'm unlovable that I need you to love me the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's another one in that category is surrender. I surrendered a lot my first couple of years. If I close my mind on surrender, I can't build on that.
Right.
This morning, I did not surrender. I volunteered. Similar result comes from a very different place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the level above surrender is volunteer.
Yeah.
The level above volunteer is God uses me as a tool to touch another life, and I don't take credit for it.
Right. Yeah.
The next level is God uses me to touch another life, and I don't want the credit for it. The next level is God uses me to touch a life, and it's become such a natural part of my life that I'm not real aware of it.
Wow. Yeah.
I've got teachers that are at that level. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I can't close my mind on any spiritual concept because when I get a new one, it looks like a pinnacle. It may be a foundation stone. So I've got to continue to hold it in an open mind. Everything I learned through noon yesterday is now an old idea.
Yeah, that is good. And that's
back
kind of, that's the energy I was putting off about pretending like I know anything, you know, because I just know it. I believe I know it right now, but something could happen here in a little bit and make that wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can, yeah, there's always a place to build. The next one I misunderstood is on page 85. What we really have is a day of reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. Is clearly my reprieve, stay of execution, is not contingent on my spiritual condition. I don't know what my spiritual condition is, and I'm not responsible for it, and I'm not qualified to judge it. Not qualified. It's like spiritual growth is not something I do, it's something I receive.
Yeah.
What I'm responsible for is the maintenance of it. Maintenance means two things: to maintain in the sense without losing something I've already got. It also means I must maintenance my spiritual condition in the same sense that I maintenance my vehicle. I rotate the tires. I got the right pressure in them. I change the oil on time. I vacuum it out. I wash it. I maintenance my spiritual condition. Same as on 77. Daily prayer and meditation, reading spiritual literature, attending meetings, sponsoring, being sponsored, taking meetings. It's the same old stuff. I have no idea what my spiritual condition is, and I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah, it's not a
What
thermometer.
I need to keep an eye on is the maintenance of it.
Yeah.
And I'm a good judge of that. The next one that I misunderstood so grossly was on 152. Paragraph begins in the middle of the page. Yes, there is a substitute, and it's vastly more than that. So fellowship and Alcoholics Anonymous, there you will find release from care, boredom, and worry. Your imagination will be fired. Fired. Not fired in the sense that you don't work here anymore. Fired in the sense of pottery, where it was just clay and kind of ugly. It went into the kiln and was fired and comes out beautiful and shiny and useful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was what I've discovered over the last little while.
Well, that is a stopping point for a lot of like younger people coming into the 12-step recovery, and we hand them this book, you know, and there's the antique language, you know, because it doesn't take anything for my mind, my alcoholic mind, to throw the brakes on anything that's going to attack that. You know, it wants to live at any course. And if I can pick this apart a little bit because I don't like the wording, that allow me to get out the door today and not play your little game you're trying to get me suckered into.
Yeah. There's another piece. I didn't misunderstand it, but I think if anyone is about to sponsor, you're sponsoring somebody who's nervous about sponsoring, they're resisting. And it's on page 159. And it's a single sentence, and it's talking about Bill Wilson, Dr. Bob, and Bill Dotson, AA number 3. Sentence begins the last paragraph. A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Those 3 guys in a year and a half with access to a hospital full of drunks only succeeded with 7. They are not all going to make it.
Yep.
And rule 1 of sponsorship is if they're ready, you can't do it wrong. If they're not ready, you can't do it right. It's not up to you.
Yeah.
Rule 2 is if you take credit for the ones that make it, you're going to be stuck with the blame for the ones that don't. Some of them are going to die.
Yeah. Really good point. Yeah. I never knew death like I've known it since coming into 12-step recovery. Yeah. It's just, it's every week, somebody a couple degrees away from me, a friend's friend or a friend's cousin or whatever, somebody falls to this thing. I thought people were overreacting when I first started hearing that, when I came in the rooms, you know, that was just a big scare tactic. And then I hung around long enough to find out that it was the truth. Yeah.
It's the unvarnished truth. That's just what's happening. That's just what's happening. Huh?
We lost a real good friend this past week on a motorcycle wreck, and he was was sober. He had just celebrated 8 years in May, and named Dave the Dog Man, and was doing the deal, man. And the best I can tell is that it was time for him to go home. And always there's some people that toss around some bad meaning of what the 13th step is, and I don't really like that. Some other teacher told me the 13th step was dying sober. And I like that definition better than the one that I've heard tossed around.
I'll tell you the one I've been kind of hot on recently is the 13th tradition.
What's that?
Sticking a dollar bill in the basket. That was the custom when I got sober in the summer of '84. And with that dollar bill and just a little bit of jingle, you could have bought 2 packs of cigarettes.
Yeah. Yep.
My sponsor said, if that's all you can do, or if you can't do any, that's fine. It's not a problem.
Right.
But give it some thought. Yeah. Why don't you throw in the price of a drink? You were a top shelf drinker. Why don't you throw that in?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, you know, as I heard you say that before, and it rang a bell, you know, and I'm fortunate, you know, I can do better than $1, by golly.
Yeah, I can too. I had a number of years ago, I did a series of workshops in Australia. And at one point, I just went to a regular meeting. And their dollar at that time was worth about 90 cents. Okay, so it's pretty close.
Yeah.
And when the basket came by me, it was full of 5s and 10s. There were very few $1 coins in there.
Yeah.
Very few.
I know the treasuries where I hang out at, because we give treasury report. I'm not the only guy thinking that, because we tend to be shipping off quite a overage above our prudent reserve upstream, and are able to do some other things with that money at times to help people.
There's another important piece too, is that we've got to allow the groups to be self-supporting. I saw a situation one time where a very wealthy man had been elected GSR, and he tried to turn down the check to pick up his expenses to go to the assembly. And an old timer said to him, you've got to take that. You must take it. If you don't, eventually, if you don't take it, then everybody isn't qualified.
Yeah.
Now, what you do with it's up to you. You want to buy a couple of cases of big books for the jail, you want to put it back in the bat, you do whatever you want with it, but you got to take it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We must allow them to be self-supporting. I wanted to go through also what I think are maybe my current vision of maybe the 4 most important phrases, sentences in the text for a newcomer.
Yeah, great. That'd be awesome.
They're not in a particular order, but these are the 4 that I think are absolutely critically important for a newcomer. And I've already added one, it's 5. So starting on Roman numeral 22 and the forward to the 3rd edition, the 3rd paragraph, the basic principles of the AA program that appears hold good for individuals with different lifestyles, just as the program has brought recovery to those many different nationalities. This next phrase is it. The 12 steps that summarize the program. What that tells me is that the steps on the wall are a summary. My sponsor said if that was the whole program, we'd have a pamphlet instead of a book.
Yeah, right.
That's the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
And a lot of guys like me got F's trying to slide with a C- working out of the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Don't be worried about the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
That's an important piece of information. So that's it. And of course, the one on 59 you referred to earlier, here are the steps we took, which is suggested as a program of recovery. But this reemphasizes that's just the Cliff Notes.
Right.
But I needed the whole thing.
It's like the short form.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Page 46 has 2 of them. Last paragraph on 46 begins with the word much. I count up 3 lines above that. And it says it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God.
Yeah.
So I like to tell the newcomer, get out of the business of understanding God. If God were small enough for you to understand, he wouldn't be big enough to handle the things you're going to need for him to handle. My sponsor says the teacup of my mind cannot contain the ocean of God.
Yeah.
So when we talk about God as you understand, we're not saying you're going to understand God. You are not. We're saying you don't have to believe what anybody else told you.
Yeah. And you helped me a lot in step 3 with that, because I had some idea about like that. I had to like have a concept in place, and then I heard you talk about, no, it's just a decision to start doing this thing. It's not I'm going to decide to do that. There's no way I can actually do that. I can't do that today. I can't turn my life over today.
Yeah.
I could decide to when I get up this morning and try to continue to decide to all day long in everything I'm doing.
Yeah. And then on page 46, 5 lines from the bottom, we found that God does not make too hard terms to those who seek him. And I like to translate that into Tennessee English. What that says is God's a little bit too busy running a mighty universe to be angry with a turkey like you.
Yeah.
Now have a seat and get your book out. We've got work to do.
I love that. Yeah.
That says.
Yeah, that is.
That's what that says. And that's important information. So many things. I love this book.
Me too. And I love doing this with you. It's a little bit of a, I don't really have idols or heroes in the popular world, ball teams or sports or anything like that. But what I have learned from you has struck my recovery in a heavier way than any other teacher that I really have had. And then when I found out that my sponsor was taking stuff from you whenever he was teaching me and using these things like this to help me. And that's what I use while I'm sponsoring guys today. And I watch this recipe works so well. And it's really, I like to tell, a guy told me this early on, I can guarantee you that if you have this thing called alcoholism, this thing I got, if you'll work these steps and practice these principles in your daily life, your life's going to get a whole lot better and you never have to drink again. But he said, but if you have this alcoholism thing and you don't work these steps and you don't practice these principles, your life's going to get a whole lot worse. And I had that happen to me over a little period before I could finally open my ears and my eyes and hear what was in here. It's a guarantee if you will do this.
I've been telling the new guys that our mission here is not to change you so you never drink again. It's not the mission.
No.
It's to change you so you never want to drink again.
Right.
You may not be able to imagine that. I've been living it for a long time. I'm sober since June of 84. The last time I wanted something was sometime in December of 84.
Yeah.
I'd had a sponsor for a month or so. I was somewhere in the step work. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah.
And life has happened since then.
Yeah. And
life has happened. I've had 2 divorces, one I wanted and one I didn't. My daughter shot herself and survived, and we went through all of that. In June 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer in my throat. They took my teeth because they radiated my jawbone to where it's dead now. They haven't been able to fit with dentures. We're going to try again starting tomorrow. And I've had so much radiation in my throat that I can't swallow anything thicker than applesauce. I'm on a liquid diet probably for the rest of my life. Oh, not a big deal. I came to you on a liquid diet. I'm kind of used to it. I got back into it pretty easily, but I don't feel sorry for myself. Because I got 2 things I can look at. I'm on a liquid diet for the rest of my life, or I can look at I get to live the rest of my life. Yep. I've made my choice.
Yeah. And
I'm not really interested in watching you eat, but but it's not bothering me.
Yeah.
I'm really pretty good with it.
It was hard for me to understand the part about just how little the drinking and using really was, when there's lines in here that says that was just a symptom and stuff like that. When I was hard and heavy into it, I couldn't even begin to understand that. But, now really the drinking and drugging is such a small part of it today, man. It's this growth that this process and these principles have given me is what I stand on top of today. Just so happens I still haven't, like you said, I haven't wanted to drink since then.
There's one on page 12. I've just added a couple to this. This is interesting. I'm doing a men's retreat here not too long.
All right.
And I'm going to do this, and I've just added 2 pages. On page 12, Ebby Thatcher is sober 60 days, and he's gone to take a spiritual message to his drunken friend Bill Wilson, who is drinking gin and pontificating about the czar of the heavens, which, as you may recall, gin is perfect for that. and I never talked to anybody that was there, but this is how I see the energy on this. Finally, Ebby says, why don't you choose your own conception of God? Now, I don't know that was the energy, and that's how I see it. But Bill thought it was so important, he put it in italics. And it was so important, again, that he put it on page 93, about 6 lines down in the chapter, Working with Others. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him, which I think takes the doorknob and the light bulb out of the equation.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And what I like to do with a newcomer is say, I'm going to ask you we're just going to do what's working for about 3 million of your closest friends. I want you to lay aside what you believe about God. Lay aside, not disbelieve, but lay aside what you're trying to believe. You may not be able to tell those apart, and lay aside what they told you about God. And I don't care how qualified they claim to be. Don't care. And we're going to do what the book says. And what I'm going to ask you to do is give me a series of single words and very short phrases that describe the individual characteristics you would like for God to have, not what you believe, not what they said. I'm going to participate. If you like my suggestions, take them. If you don't like them, don't take them. Don't let me sell you a thing here. And I have them right on the inside back cover of their big book. I think that's that important. Usually the first one they give me is forgiving, and I tell them that's not good enough for me. I'm too guilty. I got to have a God that's eager to forgive. Do you like that? Well, write it down. Yeah. How about loving? How about gentle? Doesn't force me to its will. How about creative? Comes up with clever ways to get me out of the holes I keep digging in my life. How about sense of humor? I want a God that laughs and dances.
Yeah.
You like that? Write it down. How about available to me all the time?
Great.
How about a God who wants what's best for me and knows what it is?
Yeah.
Because clearly I don't. Because if I do, how did I get here?
Right.
Right. And if and only if I can have all of that, I want that God to be powerful. Many of us, especially around here, grew up with a God I wouldn't want to meet in a dark alley.
Yep.
I've had too many well-meaning people trying to scare me into heaven.
Yeah.
And I don't think it can be done. Couldn't for me anyway. And then I said, here's the hook. I'm not going to ask you to believe this. I don't think you can. It's not the assignment. The assignment is to test drive it. The question is, how do you think you would conduct your life if you believe this?
Yeah.
Conduct your life that way for a while. We'll see what happens. I hate that fake it to I hate puke. No, don't fake anything. This is very honest. Ask yourself that question. How do you think you would conduct your life if you believe that? Conduct your life that way for a while. We'll see what happens. Simple experiment. It's what the scientists call a working hypothesis. You probably know the term. It means we have reason to believe something may be true. We're not going to apply it in all cases to just see what happens. The reason we have to believe that might be true, that's my God concept. I'm carrying it 38 years, Joe.
Yeah.
But don't try to believe it. You can't. My buddy Joe, I talked about a few minutes ago. He said his sponsor said to him, he says, we're going to have to make this really simple for you, Joe. Step one, you're screwed. Joe says, wow, it's going to take a miracle. He said, that's step two. Step three is why don't you try for one? Joe says, I don't believe in God. His sponsor says, you don't have to believe in God to be successful here. And you don't. But you must conduct your life like someone who does. And that is the best description or definition of spirituality I've ever heard. And this one came out, those things that you hear yourself saying.
Yep.
This one happened to me day before yesterday, talking to a lady friend of mine. We were at the Music City Roundup, a big party. It was great fun. And I heard myself say, AA is the playground of spirituality. If you're not having fun here, it's because you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I agree.
It's that simple.
So
that was pages 12 and 93. The next one is 132, the dead center of the page. Now that's 17 lines from the top and bottom and 2 words in from both margins, where it says, we absolutely insist on enjoying life.
Yeah.
And then the last one of the series that I think are so critically important for the newcomer begins at the bottom of 151. Now and then, a serious drinker being dry to moment says, don't miss it all, feel better, work better, having a better time. As ex-problem drinkers, we smiled at such a sally. We know our friends like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half a dozen drinks and get away with them. I stop and talk about that for just a minute. I don't have the slightest interest in being a social drinker. I don't want to have a drink with the boys on the way home from work or a beer while I mow the grass or watch the ball game. I don't think a glass of wine going to make this steak taste any better. Mm-hmm. A half a dozen, the way I pour, no consequences, we could talk. So I don't need to fool myself. And the other thing is if you put wine in it, I'm not eating it. As far as I don't know that it cooks out, and I'm not willing to bet everything in my life on that. And I'm sorry if you're offended. You can be offended. I'm not betting everything in my life on that.
I agree.
I think that's silly. And I just yesterday bought another bottle of non-alcohol mouthwash. Mm-hmm. I got a friend whose wife went out. She wasn't even planning to go out. She had a mouthful of mouthwash and decided to swallow. And she was gone for a couple of years.
Yeah.
I put alcohol mouthwash in my mouth. I'm one mistake away from blowing my life up. I'm not willing to do that. Not willing to do it. Anyway, I want to continue here on 152. This is the sentence I want to get to from my newcomer.
Okay.
He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. Now, wait a minute. Does that mean if I'm going to get sober and stay that way, I'm going to have to find a way to be sober and happy at the same time? That's exactly what that means. That's exactly what that means. If recovery isn't fun, I'm not going to be able to continue to do it.
Yeah, nobody
will. And
will.
although it may not look like fun to you now, fun will change. Lady friend of mine she's gone now, but she used to take meetings back into the prison. She was once an inmate. And she said she always dressed like she's going to the prom. And she opens it by saying, now, ladies, I know you've been getting shot at and stabbed and waking up with strangers and sleeping under the pool table and getting in fist fights and wrecking your car and going to jail and making your mama cry. But I'm here to tell you there are other ways to have fun. I thought it was a pretty interesting point. There are other ways to have fun. You're going to have to find them. And it may require some exploration. Yeah. I was talking to a newcomer the other day who said, I don't know who I am. I said, well, of course you don't. Mm-hmm. If you're like me, you've been holding up masks all your life. Yeah. And you've done it so long and so effectively that you don't know who stands behind the last mask. And you're going to have to explore a little bit. Give yourself the chance to go try to find out. Try some things. And I got a wild hair some years ago. I wanted to do pottery. Yeah. I want to sit at the wheel and feel the clay. And it was on me for about a month. Needless to say, I run into a woman at a meeting that has a pottery shop, and I went and did pottery for it. I don't ever want to do that. Yuck. No. But I went and found out.
Right.
And I didn't have to buy a kiln and a wheel and 2,000 pounds of clay.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not
Go
an
find out.
investment.
You think you'd like to go camping? Don't buy out the LL Bean catalog. Don't do it.
Yeah,
Deal with people in recovery. They've already bought it out. They got borrowed.
borrow.
Try it. Try some stuff. Explore a little bit.
Yeah. Yep. I've got turned on to yoga big time. And it's one of
There
the
you
things
go.
I didn't know I was going to like it. And then I did it. And actually, it's another thing I got tricked into doing. But once I did
Yeah.
it, I was like, all right, but I don't like going to the gym. And that,
Yeah, I renamed my refrigerator the gym. I go to the gym every day.
every day, a few times a day.
Yeah.
I've heard that
There's
joke change with the pot, with the John. I renamed my John the gym. Go to the
Page
gym
8.
every morning. Do you say 8?
page 8. Yeah, they added this about a year ago. This is new stuff. Just past halfway down the page, I was soon to be catapulted in what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. Einstein said the fourth dimension was time. And the time I'm catapulted into is the right here, right now, between the claps. A place the alcoholic rarely visits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm off in the past, reliving victories, some of which may have actually happened, or I'm off in the future, trying to figure it all out and what if and the other and naked this and what and plan B and plan C, just bleh, and I'm never right here, right now, in the claps, which is where I need to be.
Yeah.
But Bill goes on to describe the fourth dimension in his own language, and he says, I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in the way of life that's incredibly more wonderful as time passes. Happiness. I want to be happy.
Mhm.
Aristotle said that's what everyone wants, is to be happy. I want that for myself. Peace. Yes, I want to be peaceful. I want that for myself. And usefulness. Wait a minute. That's for them. What is that doing on this list? The answer to the question is there's no direct path into happiness and peace. It's a byproduct. It's a side effect of being useful.
Mm. Yeah.
I've read this book quite a few times. The single theme that appears more often than any other is useful. It's in the text from Roman numeral 11 through Dr. Bob's story. It appears over 50 times.
Mm.
Be useful.
Yeah. Help
There's
somebody.
nothing out there that I can acquire, achieve, retain that will bring me happiness. Pleasure, absolutely, but the shine will wear off. I was in the hardware business back before there was software, and my company helped open the first Home Depot. And the guy that bought our category there, I mean, they started blowing and going. They were making more money than my first wife could spend. And he ordered a Lamborghini. And they don't say, well, what color you want? We'll box one up. You got to wait 6 months for this Lamborghini. And this guy, you could not talk business with him for hearing about this dadgum Lamborghini for 6 months.
Mm.
He finally got the Lamborghini, and 2 weeks later, he was tired of it.
Yeah.
The shine wore off a Lamborghini in 2 weeks. There's nothing out there that's going to bring me happiness. It isn't going to happen. Page 84 in the 9th step promises, there's one that kind of ties into this in the third line on 84. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. What in the world are uselessness and self-pity doing together? The answer to the question is the path out of self-pity is through being useful.
Yeah.
Through the course of this cancer, I fell into self-pity twice for a very short period of time. And I used that path to get out. I called other people. I realized very quickly what my assignment was when I got the cancer. And we're just doing audio here, right?
That's correct.
Nobody can see this, but you and me,
Just me and you.
you can tell them what you see here.
He has got a COVID mask on, a hospital mask with a red nose on it, a red
It's a clown nose.
red
Clown nose. Yeah. And I put a clown nose on my mask. And that's the one I wear. And I carry clown noses. I got them in my vest pocket. I've been carrying them for a long time because when the traffic comes to a stop on the interstate, that probably never happens in Louisville. It happens here. When it comes to a stop, I whip out a clown nose and put it on. And I reach in this other pocket and I get out a small tube of bubbles like this. I start blowing bubbles out the window to get the attention of the other drivers. And they see the clown nose and start laughing, and I start laughing. Laughter's contagious.
Yeah.
And I want to hang on, I made a mistake. And I want to be happy. And I was told a long time ago, whatever I want myself should give to everybody else.
Yeah. Right.
So I have turned a traffic jam into fun.
Yeah.
So I've been carrying clown noses, and now I give them away because I'm wearing the mask. I buy them in bags of 50.
And really? Yeah.
Oh, yes, sir. I walk around. I carry 3 in my pocket all the time and 3 or 4 of the bubbles. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's it.
Constantly.
Part of
So,
that.
so my job is to lift the spirits of other people. It's part of my morning prayer, is that I don't miss any opportunities to be of service, to spread love and joy.
Yeah.
Page 15 in Bill's story, and I like to tie these 3 pages together. It was 8, 84, and now 15. My wife and I abandoned ourselves with enthusiasm to the idea of helping other alcoholics to a solution to their problems. It was fortunate. My old business associates remained skeptical for a year and a half, during which I found a little work. I think it's really important for the newcomer to hear that too. Don't be upset with your family if they're not impressed by your 90-day chip.
Yeah.
They have every right to their skepticism. Let us cheer for it. We understand. I think the longer it takes them to buy into your recovery, probably the healthier they are.
Probably.
They have every right to their skepticism. Do not become upset with them. Tell them that. Yes, I did that stuff a long time. You have every right to be skeptical. I understand. That's the perfect response to that. Continuing on 15. I was not too well at the time. Listen to the power in these words. It was plagued. What a word. Plagued by waves of self-pity and resentment, the 2 great killers of alcoholics. This sometimes nearly drove me back to drink, but I soon found that when all other measures failed, work for the non-alcoholic would save the day. Many times I've gone to my old hospital in despair. I looked up the word. It means without hope. Without hope. That's beyond depression.
Yeah.
Without hope. I'm talking to a man there. I'd be amazingly lift up, set on my feet, said, designed for living, works and rough going. It worked for me. The prescription is all over this book. When I've got a problem of any kind, my prescription is to go do something for you. Go help you. Makes no sense. Works every time.
It does. It works every time.
Works every time. Yeah.
There's nothing, this program allowed me to find my purpose. I floundered around until I got here, and thought I was supposed to be an engineer, and thought I was going to, have kids and a family, and all those things did happen. But all of it felt forced, and now that I'm doing this, I really do. When I said in the beginning of this, that I run around handyman and woodwork to keep the lights on and the insurance paid in the car, and to keep gas in the car so that I can get to the meeting. And so that I can do things like this podcast just was like, I talk about God leaves sticky notes around, and part of my job is to find where they're at and read them and see what he wants me to do. And one day I got the idea to start carrying this message through this podcast. And so I followed up on it. Now I'm in 4 years of it, and I get letters and emails from people all over the country and sometimes further away that send me a note to tell them that somebody on here touched them. It never is me. It's always my guest that they said something that brought light into those people's day. There is nothing anymore. And this is almost, I've heard you say that there's absolutely nothing that fulfills my heart more than watching the lights come on in another man as he works his program. And then maybe the only other thing is to watch the lights come on in his kids and his parents, and this ripple happen, his wife and this
and his sponsee.
Yep.
Yeah. The first time I went to Kiev, I sponsor a guy over there.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, it happened 15 years ago. We didn't used to be able to sell all the seats at the usual suspects, our men's retreat. We comped in the guys from one of the treatment centers. And this guy from Kiev asked me to get him a sponsor. And I prayed about it. I said, I'll talk to you tomorrow. I prayed about it that night. And my ego said, this is a shot at the entire Soviet bloc, and I'm taking it. And I announced to him the next morning I was going to be his sponsor. He still reminds me frequently that he never asked me to sponsor him. He asked him to get him a sponsor. It's not the same thing. I got him to the steps before he went back. And I said, find a sponsor over there. I know A is over there. I know the guy that took it. He was one of my teachers. And he got over there. We stayed in touch. He was the CFO of a multinational corporation. They had offices in Kiev and Boston. So he's got a US phone, no problem. And he said they've got the big book in Russian, which they all read and speak, but he said they can't figure out how to use it. Nobody can get 6 months. They read it, but they don't understand. They don't know how to do it. He said, every time I talk in a meeting, they line up like I'm a circuit speaker. And he said, there are no sponsors. And I said, I will sponsor you. And I said, you're going to have to sponsor a couple of women. It's got to start somewhere.
Yep.
And so he did. He started sponsoring 2 women and a bunch of guys. And it was got a couple of stories on that. Sometime later, he calls me and he says, this guy I'm sponsoring, I got him through the 12 steps and he refuses to sponsor. What should I do? I said, drop him.
Yeah.
I said, you're sobering up the entire Soviet bloc. We cannot allow you to be a dead end. He said, no. He said, I love this guy. So I said, let me explain to you another way. If you don't drop him, I'm dropping you. He said, whoa. And I said, I don't work with guys that don't do what I ask. It's negotiable on the front end.
Yeah.
But that's how it's going to have to be. He said, okay. And he went and explained that to that lad. Now he's sponsoring a half a dozen, they're sponsoring another 40. And there's just, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
But it's that fear that you're not. I think the 3 most important things a sponsor can say are, I love you. God is love. When I give love, I give God its highest gift. I love you. 2, I'm proud of you. Yeah. Constantly searching for ways to say that. Yeah. And 3, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the one. You've got to be able to say that. Now I'll go find out, but I don't know. That's so important.
Yeah, that is.
Anyway, I was over there and I did a series of workshops on the steps with him sitting next to me, of course, and he translates very quickly. He knows what I'm going to say. Yeah. And when we were all finished, after that, I was there quite a while, like 10 or 12 days, because we did workshops in 3 different cities. But we went to a meeting and one of the women he sponsored was getting a 2-year chip, which made her an old timer. Yeah. Right. Get the perspective on that. Yeah. And I sat through a meeting and I didn't understand anything I said except spasiba, which is thank you. And when it was over, they wanted to take pictures. And I'm telling you, those guys will take some pictures. Oh, yeah. We are taking pictures and I'm good with it. But there's one young man is right next to me and all of them, not inappropriately. He's in every picture and he's next to me and everyone. I finally said to Oleg, I said, what's the story on this kid? He said, he knows something you don't know. I said, what? He said, he knows there are 5 generations of sponsorship here. You're 1, he's 5. Oh, wow. That still upsets me. And I wonder where that is today. Yeah, man. That was 10 years ago. Powerful. 9. Yeah. 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 This is an amazing thing. It's absolutely astonishing. I don't know how I got off on that. When my sponsor did this thought that the 12, that the 12 steps are here for everybody, and other people are using it, but we don't have any vehicle that just gives it to anybody who wants it. Right now you had to have an affliction to qualify, so to speak, and there's 100 of them. And we started doing it here, and we got into that same thing. And we were trying to get some gals to come in and help carry, we're telling some of our 12-step friends that here's an opportunity to do this. And that's what we started needing to do, it's like, oh, we're going to have to start sponsoring across the gender thing. And I learned things from sponsoring a few women that I would have never learned had I not had that opportunity to do that. And now it's flourishing and they got their own, we don't have to do it anymore because they've got their own traction now. That's right. Yeah. Back away. Yeah. And we backed out of it and watch this. They have their own women's meeting. And that was important to me too, because I fell into when I first got sober, and that place I found was a men's meeting. And, at the time I'd been divorced for just a little bit, and I couldn't see any sense in going to just a men's meeting. It just didn't make sense to me. But today that is my home group, and this podcast is named after it. When I came in, I got caught, ended up breaking in houses, stealing pain pills. And I sat down in front of the judge here in New Albany, Indiana, that told me I was going to go to prison for 6 to 20 years. And, I just could not fathom that, and it got back to, I'll use something. And after a little bit, I had a revelation that I would work these steps and see if it would work, after all these people telling me, and ended up spending 1 year on home incarceration and a year on probation. And, right after that, I ended up with a trip to go to Japan. My work had been teasing me about having to go to Japan for like
4 months. And I asked my probation officer, and she said, no, that if he's going to Tennessee or Alabama, that might be okay, but they wouldn't let me go to Japan. But the trip kept on getting punted out and punted out. So on January the 18th of 2018, I got let off of probation. And on January the 28th, I was standing on a mountain in Japan, looking over the city of Nagasaki. And, 2 weeks ago, I had to ask permission to leave the county. And now I am here over on the other side of the world. And you made me think of this part of it, because I went to a Japanese AA meeting over there. Went to a couple of them, but one in particular. And I sat through that whole meeting. And one of the things that I had my big book, and I was going to give a big book away over there, something I had an extra one to trade, but they wouldn't take it because they didn't have any, they need to trade something of similar value. So I ended up giving a little pocketbook away, and I got a little Japanese AA book, but I was sitting there following along in what I thought, because of the cadence that they were reading, how it works. And I'm at the point, and the guy's reading, and I read that our personal adventures before and after made clear 3 pertinent ideas. And the Japanese guy said A, and he said something, and he said B, and he said something, and I was following along like that. And I sat through that meeting over there, and those guys, I shared. Those guys couldn't hear a word I said. They encouraged me to share. They couldn't understand a word I said, and I couldn't understand a word they said, and it did not matter. It was one of the coolest things I've had. One of them, these things are miracles that pile up if you walk this thing. And it's one of my miracles is sitting in that Japanese AA meeting. It was just so moving. I can see your wheels turning.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They're turning like crazy. I've been so blessed. I've been over there 3 times now.
Have you?
I've done Russia twice. I've done Moscow and St. Petersburg twice, and Kiev 3 times. And and I'm scheduled to go.
Are you?
I'm scheduled to go back. Yeah.
Right now, with everything going on over there.
Scheduled for June of next year. We'll see.
Yep.
We'll see what happens.
We're not in management anymore, are we? Yeah. I get in line.
I have a new manager. One of the other things that I've been I call it chasing a concept through the book.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been working with one that's incomplete. But as much as we talk about God, we don't say much about God. I already touched on the 2 things on page 46, that you're not going to understand God and God's not mad.
Right.
On page 57, there are a lot of things. I'm going to do everything I love on 57, right? You're not late for supper or anything, are you?
No, I will sit here forever with you, man.
Save for a few brief moments, the temptation, the thought of drink has never returned. At such times, a great revulsion has risen up in him. Seemingly could not drink if he would. God to restore his sanity. So this is the first place that talks of restoration to sanity. It actually happens through the 9 steps, because they tell us in step 10, that's where we've been restored to sanity.
Yeah.
So you want to get sane, do the first 9 steps. But this is referencing that. But it goes on to say, well, there's just but a miracle of healing. Its elements are simple. Circumstances made him willing to believe. In my case, I worked myself into a hole I couldn't lie my way out of. He humbly offered himself to his maker. Then he knew. He didn't say, help me. He said, take me. Help me and take me are not the same prayer. Even so has God restored us all to our right minds. There that is again. To this man, the revelation is sudden. Some wrote it more slowly. This is maybe the most powerful promise in this book. He has come to all who have honestly sought him. I like the analogy. God's kind of like the mother of a 3-year-old playing hide and seek with her child. Where does she hide? She hides where the child can find her. This is my heavenly parent. Where does he hide?
Yeah, that is great. I've got something on here on this page written that I can't train God. I tried to make him my God rather than me his man. I have that note on this bomb 57.
God's hard to train.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big fella, take a knee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
that 9-step that 9 pieces of getting to the third step is something that I sat down with you explaining it on a tape, and I rewound it and I played it and I rewound it and I played it and I rewound it and I played it until I thought I understood what was going on, because it touched me as I listened to it. And that's what I do with every single guy I have. I've got this cabin out in the country where I'm blessed like crazy. Got this log cabin my dad and my father and I built, and I take guys out there to do 5th steps, and we go out there and I cook them a steak over the fire and some asparagus or something, and we sit down and eat. And then we do a 5th step, and I go to bed and go to sleep and allow them to do 6 and 7 out there in the middle of God's wilderness. And the other day I did my 23rd one out there, and I don't keep track for me or you. There's some reason I know that. I don't really know. I'm an engineer at heart, but to be able to do that, and I walk through, I tell them when I hit this 3rd step part, I tell everyone, man, this is my favorite part. Now I say that about every part, when we get to the 9th step, I go, this is my favorite part. And but the 3rd step is definitely one. Taking a guy out to the 3rd step decision is one of my favorite things to do in life, especially when he says yes.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I had an experience when I was driving that big airplane for the Air Force. We landed American Samoa and took on fuel and took off for Honolulu. It's an 8-hour flight and nothing in between but water. And halfway across, getting into the new fuel, is contaminated, had water in it. At our altitude, the temperature is minus 50 degrees. They don't call it water at that altitude and that temperature. They call it ice.
Yeah.
And it clogs fuel lines. And giant jet engines did not respond well to fuel starvation. They do what we call compressor stall. And we come down into warmer air. We can run the engines down here, but we can't make Honolulu at this altitude. And it's already closer to go on than it is to go back. A jet engine's more efficient at higher altitude. You get in trouble in a jet in fuel, you add power and climb. You'll get that climb fuel back. And we climb back up, we can't stay. And the worst thing you can do for gas mileage on planes is go up and down. That's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Because the numbers say we're going to put a 300,000 pound airplane in the Pacific Ocean about 160 miles an hour today, and we're all going to die.
Ooh.
Pretty good percentage of the people that are hearing this have had the experience of thinking they're going to die sometime soon. We have faced jealous husbands and laid down bikes and looked down gun barrels and drug deals gone bad and wrecked cars and trucks. A lot of us thought we were going to die in the next moment or two. 4 hours is a long time to think you're going to die today.
Yeah.
And I promised to God, I don't think I believed in it. If he would get me out of this one, I would quit smoking was first. Quit smoking, quit drinking, quit visiting ladies I'm not married to. I'm going back to church, the early service. I might even build some churches. You don't leave anything in the bag on this little beauty. And 10 fuel tanks all say 0. We turned final at Hickam at 9,000 feet. Said if we can make high station for a forced landing, we can at least crash on dry land so our bodies can be sent home for burial. That is the conversation in that airplane.
Wow.
We land on the end of that runway and taxi it in. They dip our fuel tanks like you dip your crankcase. How much oil you got?
Mm-hmm.
We did not have enough fuel left on that airplane to start 4 engines and taxi back to the runway. We did not have that much left on that plane. I didn't even check into the hotel, went straight to the bar, put my bags down on either side of the bar stool, said Mai Tai, the tall one, pack of cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
Of course, you understand that.
Yeah.
And this is what I see. In those days when I prayed, I was trying to make him my God. What I've been taught here is how to make me his man. You see, I had it backwards.
Yep.
The big difference is this one works, that one never did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like you said, guard's hard to train. Now he moves slowly, and he's old. I know that. Hang on.
Okay.
And I was reminded, this is something that came to me not too long ago. I've had the first part of it, the second part just got here. I've long believed that the forgiveness process at step 4 is the single most important thing we do. We close a lot of meetings with a prayer that says, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive.
Mm-hmm.
What that says is, God, if I don't forgive them, don't you forgive me. I'm asking you to be graded by my own standards. So that part is a little bit more important than life or death. I just recently realized that step 9 is the same way. That where I can't stand, I cannot afford the price. I just turned 79 years old. I cannot afford the price of my soul to stand naked before my creator, guilty of hating one of his other children.
Yeah.
No matter what. I also cannot pay the price of standing naked before him, guilty of having done something that gave somebody else a resentment against me, unless I can point at a place where I at least tried to fix it.
Yeah.
Because they are blocked from God by the resentment against me that I created. I have got to be able to point at a place where I tried. And I think those 2 steps are the most critical. They're both more important than life or death. And that's why.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just got that second piece just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Same way with this stuff. It's the evolution of this stuff happening in people's lives as they practice it. I have to, the same thing, the exact opposite of that helps me with working with new guys and their goofiness, I have to remember that I was that way too, that I was playing the same stuff because I remembered, standing out there thinking that this wouldn't work for me or that I'd never be able to have any more fun or I would never have any more friends and all these myths behind this
It's
thing.
going to be dull.
And it's dull. Yeah, that was a big one. Was the first time I walked into the first AA meeting I ever walked into, I was expecting to see gutter drunks and a lot of sad faces. And I walked into a middle class meeting of happy people that looked just like me.
I started to talk about the few things that the book does say about God.
Yeah, God.
It begins in what I call the short form of the steps, which is pages 59 and 60, begins with a power, capital P, greater than ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and moves on to God as you understand him. In the traditions, it moves on to loving God. It's an interesting transition. And I like to talk about that when I talk about step 2. Page 133, we say something very specific about God. We don't say many very specific things. But on page 133 in the second line, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free.
That is specific.
That's real specific. And free had to come first. Through the process of the 12 steps, I got free, which gave me the opportunity to become happy and joyous.
Yeah.
It was important.
Yeah.
Hang on for a minute. I'm checking my notes here. I've got a really good memory, but it's kind of short.
Yeah.
Page 161. They just added this a couple of months ago, which is to say, I just finally saw it for the first time. Whoops. That's 181. I can do it. I know I can. 2/3 of the way down the page. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially if he means business. Social distinctions, petty rivalry, jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. Being wrecked in the same vessel, restored and united under one God. Wait a minute. One God. We've been talking about God as you understand him.
Yep, I've never seen that before either.
Well, they just added. Don't be careful. Don't put your finger on that. You'll smudge that ink. It's wet. I guarantee it's wet. They just added that just a couple of months ago. I should have told you before.
Yeah.
And this is what I've seen. I like the idea that God is a little bit like a faceted gemstone. That's like a diamond with a lot of facets aside. And I see one side and you see another.
Mm-hmm.
We're both right.
Yeah.
But what I see is the 12 steps, each in its own way, is an action of love. And this one God is the God of love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who the one God is. And I've come to believe that serving the God of love is not a part-time job.
Yeah. I
won't have a tombstone if my will is done. But if I were going to have one, that's what I would want on it. Serving the God of love is not a part-time job.
Yeah, that is the truth.
It just didn't. I'd like to share a recent, my sponsor 37 years ago gave me a definition of revelation. A revelation is when I figure out for myself something you guys been telling me for 6 months or longer. That's a revelation.
Yeah.
But
I had one of those.
yeah, well, you just described one a few minutes ago. That's what brought it to mind. So I was sitting by a stream, just quiet, and across the stream I saw a pretty good sized cloud, and I thought, every drop of rain in that cloud is following God's will perfectly. I know it is. And across the stream was a tree, and there was a bird sitting there. And I thought, well, so's a bird. I looked down into the stream, and I see these small fish. I thought, well, so are they. Why can't I? And I got my answer. And the answer is, I am. I
Mm.
am. I'm convinced to the depths of my soul it's not my job to be perfect. If anyone that hears my voice thinks it's their job to be perfect, I'll pray for you. God, life's going to be so hard for you. But if it's not my job to be perfect, what's my job? My job is to make mistakes. It's not okay that I make mistakes. It's my assignment. It's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. That's my job. And they've sent the right guy. They sent the right guy. And all my life, they say, well, we learn from our mistakes. Well, really? Well, then I don't know if it's arrested more than once. So you don't either.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Guys like me don't learn from our mistakes. We learn from living with the results of our mistakes. Hold that thought, read the 12 steps. Half of them are about me embracing the results. 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 11 are all about me embracing the results of my mistakes. It's where the learning. So this is the learning process as I understand it right this moment. Item 1, make a mistake. I have a definition of a mistake. A mistake is an invitation to a lesson.
Hmm.
It's all it is.
Yeah.
It's all it is.
I like that. I love it.
And the evidence is if I'd already learned the lesson, would not have made the mistake. And the great truth, I don't have to make a mistake. I don't have the power to make a mistake so ugly that God can't turn it into something magnificent, not fix. That's who I am. That's who he is. All right. So here's the learning process. 1, make a mistake. 2, be notified I made the mistake. I don't always know.
Yeah.
Item 3, own the mistake. Yeah, that was me. And if they only know 80%, I got to tell them the other 20. I got to own it.
Own it.
Item 4, consult a spiritual advisor about how to. Item 5, make the amend. Not always, but usually there's an amend to be made. Item 6, embrace the lesson. The lesson, the embracing of the lesson comes with the making of the amend.
Mm.
Item 7, share the lesson, which is what really sets it. Item 8, when I share the lesson, I have to tell you I made the mistake. If I just share the lesson, I'm preaching. Not too many want to hear it.
Right.
When I stand as a sinner beside a sinner, he can hear me. When you tell me you made the mistake, I can hear you talk about the lesson.
Yeah.
Item 8, share that I made the mistake. Item 9, make the next mistake. That's my assignment. It's why I'm here.
Yeah.
So freedom has 2 pieces. The first half of the freedom is I have my own permission to make mistakes. I expect me to make mistakes. And I know what I'll do with them. You just heard it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I do. That's what I've been trained to do. That's what I do. Right? That's half of the freedom. The other half is you have my permission to make mistakes. If I got a rope on you holding you in line, you jump out, you pull me with you.
Yeah.
It has to be okay with me that you make mistakes. And that's 2 former wives and those of you who got your driver's licenses out of Cheerios boxes and a guy that's running Russia right now. Everybody.
Yeah.
Because if they don't have my permission to make mistakes, if their mistake is going to upset me, I'm a prisoner of their behavior. And I don't want to be a prisoner anymore.
Yeah.
I discovered the source of all of my own anger. I can tell you where every bit of it comes from.
Where's
It comes from being sure I'm right.
Yeah.
I've never been angry when I wasn't sure I was right. And being right comes from having passed judgment. The only way to get right is to judge a situation or person as not being at the standards that I believe they should be. So I can be right, so I can be angry.
Yeah.
So if I don't ever judge, I don't ever get angry. I got that piece of information about 7.5 years ago and added to my morning prayers. And I'm not batting 1,000, but I'm on the all-star team. It has gotten so much better.
Yeah.
I asked him this morning, please bless me. I don't judge anyone or anything. If I find myself angry, I got to stop and pray because this is what I've discovered. Anger and love never travel together. They're mutually exclusive. If I'm in one of those, I'm not in the other.
Can't be in the other.
Sadness and love do. Father, I'll just judge somebody. I'm mad. I please bless me. I don't judge. And please change that anger into sadness. And if I can respond in sadness, is it pause when agitated?
Yeah.
Right? If that's what the pause is for, is to change that anger into sadness. When I respond in sadness, I can respond with love and he can hear me. If I respond in anger, he can't hear me and I wind up making amends.
Yeah. Right.
When I respond in sadness and love, I don't find myself making amends.
Yeah.
Sadness and love travel together. Anger and love don't.
Do not. Yeah.
And the icing on that is when it becomes okay with me that you make a mistake that appears to hurt me. The fact is, you can't hurt me. I'm sitting in God's lap. You cannot hurt me. It can look like you do, but you can't.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
It has to be okay with me. There was a phenomenal freedom in that. There's an astonishing freedom that comes in that.
Yeah.
And I talk about one more thing.
people.
I know we're running kind of long.
Yeah. And I'm not long. I am not at all. So don't worry about that. I just want to make sure you're okay.
My fear of death has been gone for over 30 years. I was sitting at my desk typing one evening, and all of a sudden I got a twinge in my lower back. And within 10 minutes, I was in pain I did not know was available. I did not know it was possible to hurt like I was hurting.
Mm.
And I was being driven to the hospital, and it occurred to me as we got on the interstate that I'd offered God my will in my life at step 3, never had offered him my death. So I did.
Wow.
And I said, I'm not asking to go. If it's your will and my time, take me. My fear of death has been gone since then. I'll tell you what, when the fear of death leaves, it pretty well cleans out the fear locker.
Yeah. Yeah.
It'll thin that out pretty good.
Yeah.
And I discovered unintentionally a month or so ago, a good friend of mine and I we did a double date to a Mexican restaurant. I'm on a liquid diet. I can't swallow anything thicker than applesauce, but I've discovered I can swallow ground beef if it's ground up real fine. And I get a small mouthful and put some water with it. And of course, I'm flavor deprived right now. So I'm sitting there eating this beef enchilada, a little bite at a time. I thought, well, I can probably eat a piece of cheese. Well, I probably can't. And I swallowed a piece of cheese and it blocked about halfway down. I couldn't breathe. It upset my friends very much. And what went through my mind, well, I guess I'm going to die in a Mexican restaurant, which tells me that my fear of death is still gone. Because this is what I believe. Death was invented by the very same God who invented smallmouth bass, watermelon, and sex. Good job, right? Same guy. I've seen his work. I've seen his work. I think it's the great adventure. I'm excited about it. Not eager, but I'm excited about it. I want to see that storm on Jupiter. It's twice the size of Earth. I want to know why it's there. I want to travel the cosmos and visit some of the civilizations I know are out there and ask them about their spirituality. I want to work through the pearly gates and hug my mother again. Tell her what a great mom she was.
Yeah.
There's nothing to be afraid of here. Nothing at all. It's the great adventure.
It is. Bill said, just to back up on some of what you said, and that is beautiful. I'm touched. I'm just tickled pink that I get to sit here and talk to you. I know we're just two drunks all in all, so it's the same.
Just
same
a couple
thing.
of nose pukers are doing pretty good today.
Yeah. That found some way to found a design for living that works. In the book, another one is you were talking about this, about making mistakes. Bill said we are not saints, and we have the progress before progress, not perfection stuff in there.
Step 10, when we're wrong.
Yep. When.
I knew.
Not if. Yep.
It's a when question.
Yep. And that's what, and there's other places in there when it talks about certain trials and low spots. That's part of life. And that's probably one of the more beautiful things that has happened. And you shared about your daughter in the suicide attempt. Yeah. And I mean, and I listen to you, and I find myself, I work a job that I can listen all day long. And one thing that happened when I caught on to recovery audio, I started putting that in my ears all day long and sometimes all night long. And then, it kind of brainwashed me because my brain needed some washing. I needed something new to come in because of, how we carry these old lessons and faulty teachings and stuff. Yeah. And it really worked for me. I encourage my guys to do the same thing, instead of listening to the old music that used to make you want to drink, listen to this recovery audio and all this stuff. So I would catch myself crying listening. That was one of the stories that definitely did that. Because when you said that, that we're like a big garbage can and that we have to be shook out and emptied out and keep the good stuff and place the bad stuff where it belongs in the past, because someday you're going to have to go to the mountaintop alone. And you better have some room in that can or you're going to be in trouble. And that Bill tells us about the certain trials and low spots,
That's
and,
right.
Some of my readers know this, but I've had, my mom passed away when I was 14 months sober. And for that first year, remember, I was on home incarceration. So I did not get to see her in that last year as much as I would have liked to. But this group around me, and you share about this too, because my support group saved my life. They came in and created a safety net that kept me alive, so that I could walk through there with some grace and do these things in a healthy manner. A few years ago, my ex-wife sat me down and told me that her dad had been inappropriately touching my 12-year-old daughter. And if you want to know about something, I don't know where you rank this stuff, and I don't even want to, because I don't label things anymore. It's good, bad, number one, number two. But I will just say, for conversation purposes, that's probably a father's top 5, someplace in the top 5 worst nightmare kind of thing. And I watched me do things that weren't me. My friends got so mad they were ready to get a posse and wanted to know the guy's address so they could go kill him. They were mad, so I didn't have to be, so that I could be okay to support my daughter, because that's who needed me right now. She needed a dad that had his feet firmly planted in the ground. And those are a couple of my stories, but I listen to your stories, and I listen to these. My friends have somebody in the next few days is going to have one of these stories happen, and we're going to wrap our loving arms around that person and support them through that. It's like a superpower. This thing is like a superpower. You're talking about making people smile. I can go into situations and bend the reality. Used to go into situations thinking, man, this is really going to suck. And I've come to the belief that if you go into a situation thinking it's going to suck, you're right. It will. And I can go into situations and do the opposite, bring some high frequency life into situations, even heavy ones, that where, the mood's down. And it's another superpower. It's not my power. I'm real quick to say it's not mine. I'm just a channel, and have been able to harness this thing and use it to I still don't think we know exactly how far this can go.
I have an observation. The hummingbird and the buzzard fly over the very same field. One looking for something beautiful, one looking for something ugly. They both find what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Attitudes, angle of approach. I would tell another story too. My old friend Ed Mutum, get one of his talks if you don't know the name.
Say again.
Ed M. from Iowa. An astonishing guy. He was a 6'10" white man. He eventually managed the Harlem Globetrotters.
Oh, really?
He was indigent when he got sober. And he was living in Clancy's garage.
Oh, wow.
And he and I were very good friends. And he walked in the garage when there's a guy he didn't know. He shook up his hand and said, "I'm Ed Mutum." The other guy says, "My name's Lance Rensel." "You're not old enough to know the name." "I am." Lance Rensel in that day was the star wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys. And he was married to Joey Heatherton, who was the hottest woman on the North American continent. And he went to prison for exposing himself on the schoolyard. And Ed said, when Rensel said his name, Ed didn't say anything, but his face said, "I know who you are. I know what you did. I judge you, and I find you guilty, and I condemn you." And Rensel said, "I would have thought that an alcoholic would understand how somebody could do something they knew was wrong and they could not keep from doing it." Ed said his heart melted. I had the very same reaction Ed did. When he said Rensel, I judged him, I condemned him. And when he told me what Rensel said, it melted my heart. Let me tell you something. I absolutely abhor what he did. I also abhor some of the things that I did. And I'm in no position to throw the first stone. And if he walks in here right now, I can sponsor him and help him and love him. What a phenomenal gift that is.
That
To
is.
step out of the judgment business, to step out. I had on my resentment list, I had a guy beat me out of $100,000 in early 1980s. Probably not a lot of money to most of you. It's quite a bit to me. And through the forgiveness process in step 4, that's gone. I'm fine. He can walk in here right now. I can work with him.
Yeah.
I don't hold myself up as a shining example. I am not one. But what's in this book works first time, every time.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
And I hear people say, some people get it and some don't. You tell them Scott said that's a lie. Some do it and some don't.
That's exactly right.
Do it, all get it. They all get it.
I've heard you say people that work these, raise your hand out there. If anybody knows somebody that's worked these steps and practice these principles in their daily life.
Stayed active and drank again.
Yeah.
No
but
hands.
But you got to do it all. You don't, it's not the a la carte lunch. If you skip out on sponsoring people, then you can't raise your hand on that move because you weren't doing it all. And usually if you talk to somebody, there's a hole someplace where they weren't doing that.
Yeah.
Those forgiveness prayers in the 4-step, I don't know if anything has impacted my day-to-day life as much as that did, because practicing that forgiveness that I didn't, I don't have the power to do it, but to be able to receive, like, as you say, to be able to receive that forgiveness started to have me walk and operate in a completely different fashion. And that started allowing me to not do that judgmental stuff. And if somebody pulled over in front of me, I could say a prayer for them all of a sudden, rather than what I used to want to do. I mean, you said wave at them with all your fingers.
Yeah, wave the whole hand.
Yeah, the whole hand.
All of the fingers. Wave the entire thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And but that's that stuff. It's it's world changing, and to some extent, we all have some world changing power in our perimeter, in our little area. When we become better versions of ourselves a day at a time, the world around us does the same thing, and I'm
we
sold on
attract we attract what we are.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no, I can't tell you too many of the old people I used to run around with. There's none of the old people, not their type or anything, are coming around Dan's house anymore.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. I heard you talk one time about your friend Don in Louisville. And you've mentioned him in some of your talks. He's been here on the podcast before, and we
talked last night here. I spent yesterday afternoon with him.
Did you really? Yeah. What a guy. What a guy.
Part of it, yeah.
He sponsored some of the fellows that are in my group, man, and I've learned a lot from that man too, get his daily morning stuff. And how blessed are we that we have these teachers walking amongst us, and no end to the lessons that we can learn, maybe.
I tell the newcomers that too. All my life, they've been assigning my teacher. Started in kindergarten. They assigned my teacher all the way through college, the Air Force. This is your instructor pilot. Salute him, do what he says. And this thing here, where I have wagered my freedom, my sanity, my very life, I get to choose my own teachers.
Yeah.
Choose well.
Yeah.
I've chosen well. Choose well.
Yeah. It's kind of funny. I don't know that, like, my sponsor came and told me that he was going to sponsor me. I dumped my bucket one day in a burning desire in a meeting, and he come up and said he wanted to help me. And it was another miracle kind of thing, because I didn't have the guts to ask this guy to sponsor me, and I wanted him so bad. I went in there every time, and this group has a thing where they say, anybody who's willing and available to sponsor Man Through the 12 Steps, please raise your hand. And he never raised his hand. It's because he's had a full docket most of the time, and he liked to choose who he worked with. And then he come up to me one day, and his name is Christopher. He's here from Louisville too, and I guess you probably know Burns as well.
Yeah, I pray for him every day.
Yep. Me too. So that's what, sometimes I wonder if I pick my sponsees and I pick my sponsor and stuff, or if this stuff was picked for me, if God had it. I kind of have a feeling like most of the time, if a guy comes up and wants to work with me, I wonder if that was my choice to say yes or no, that guy was sent to me, and my job is to step up and suit up.
Yeah, I think, they say you can't say no to a request. That's not so. Bill talks about it, and as Bill sees it, you're going to have to. But we got to make sure whatever that is gets covered well.
Yeah.
And I do that. I broker sponsorship. I do it all the time. I'm going to tell, forgive me for telling a joke, but I think when we talk about sponsorship, I like to tell this one about the guy that came to work on Monday morning with 2 black eyes. And his boss said, "My heavens, you've been in a fight. You're such a nice guy. What happened?" He said, "Well, I was singing the choir." I said, "You got place?" "Yeah." "Well, what happened?" "Well, Sunday morning at the early service, I'm sitting there in the second row and in the choir, and the soprano who sits right in front of me is a pretty good sized lady, and she stood up to sing her solo. And the cheeks of her rather generous South Side had captured about 1.5 feet of her choir robe. And I didn't think she'd want to stand in front of the choir like that. So I reached up and grabbed the hem and pulled it out of there. And she turned around and hit me with a straight right that almost took me out of my chair. And the boss says, "Well, I mean, that's terrible, but that only explains one black eye. How'd you get the other one?" He says, "Well, I'm sitting there kind of dazed. I thought, well, if she's that mad, she must have wanted it that way. So I stuck out my hand and put it back. And the moral of the story is, don't try to work with somebody that doesn't want to, don't help somebody that doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
If he can't do it your way, throw him back.
Yeah. I've learned
Honor
that from
him.
you too.
One of the great truths is, if there's a in any given situation, if a course of action is right for one person, it's right for everybody. They may not all like it, but it's right for all of them. It's as right for me to drop a guy from sponsorship who will not do what I ask as it is for him to be dropped.
Yeah.
I think my first job as a sponsor is to love him. When I give love, I give God. It's the highest gift. Job 2 is to coach him through the 12 steps at a pace that makes sense to me based on what I know about his life. All negotiable on the front end. If he will convince me, and I'm not an easy sale, that he will not let me do job 2, job 1 remains to love him. Job 2 changes. Job 2 becomes to make it easy for him to come back.
Yeah.
If he doesn't do the 12 steps, he's not staying.
Yeah.
And I don't want him to sit on a bar stool believing he tried AA when he didn't.
Yeah.
And so the first piece of making it easy for him to come back is to make sure he knows he was never here.
Yeah.
And I go with him with a great sadness. And I use that phrase. I have a great sadness. I'm not your sponsor because you're not allowing me to perform the function. And you're not an AA because you haven't done the 12 steps. I do that for you, but really for me, because I don't want to have to stand over your casket or sit in the back at your trial when what you're doing doesn't work, because I don't think it's gonna. And if it doesn't, I'm going to have to sleep knowing I've told you the truth. And the truth is, you hadn't let me do the job and you're not in. And I say that to you so you can come back. I wish you the very best. Hopefully you'll say, no, don't drop me. I'll do anything. I say, okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you the definition of anything again. It hasn't changed, but I'll give it to you one more time. Because that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep.
Because sometimes they really don't know. And I've had them, they're just, wow, and they just snap to and they're ready to roll.
Did you say sometimes they don't know? Did
Yeah,
you say
it's amazing.
sometimes they don't know?
They don't know.
They don't know.
We got to tell them.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to run his life. I'm trying to run his recovery program. I'm not qualified to run his life.
Right.
Can't run mine.
Yeah.
No interest
Right.
in that.
Yeah.
No.
That's what another one of these wonderful things, my sponsor hardly ever gives me my answers, but because I run my questions through him, I arrive at better quality answers. It happens over and over again. I had a guy not long ago, went out and bought a brand new car. And one of my guys called, he was a 2 down from me. And my guy calls me and says, so-and-so didn't talk to me about buying this brand new car. And well, sometimes, let's watch and see how that decision pans out in the long term, because sometimes we have to learn those lessons on our own. I love that my sponsor told me when he gave me that whole thing about wanting to sponsor me, there was a great big but. I want to sponsor you. I want to work with you. But he said, do you have a big book? And I said, yeah. He goes, this guy writing in it? And I said, oh yeah, I got it tabbed out, highlighted. He said, get rid of it, buy a new one. We're starting over. And he goes, only time I have to work with people is on Tuesday nights after this meeting. Are you available on Tuesday nights after this meeting? Well, I had no idea what I was available or not available for. I'm sitting there staring at 6 to 20 years, but I said, yes, I was going to make myself available. And he said, I want you to call me every day between 1 and 3. And the very next day I called him at 2 because that's exactly between 1 and 3. And I started doing it. And I jumped right in his hip pocket like my life depended on it. And frankly, it did. And when you get a guy now I love to get a guy like me, when you get one that's just hungry and just does everything you ask him to do, there's no fight. There's no.
Oh, it'll make you look brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so fun, man. And then those guys turn into some of my best friends, we still have hold on a minute. I need to put my sponsor hat on for a second and talk to you. But most of the time, these guys are I'm one of their one of their son's godfathers that just had a baby, and you just get in and these honors. It's just unbelievable. And I know like this troop of guys they mean so much to me. They're out helping people. And then so when I ask them, when they come and ask me the same thing, I put them the same conditions my sponsor gave me. And one of those conditions was, when you get done with this stuff and you've got this spiritual awakening, it's a requirement to give it away. And that's a little harder one to enforce, except for to fire them. to say, hey, you're not doing what, this was the agreement up front. Remember when we talked about this? Remember this? You're not doing one of them. And, but the guys who are, and some of them, it's, man, like to give my first 1 year token to a guy and how cool that was, it is way cooler to sit in the back and watch a guy whose guys is giving away a 1 year token and just sit over there and watch that. I take my sponsorship very, very seriously. And in a lot of way I do it is in what you have taught me through these various tapes, like listening to what you got a big long one with Bob D, where y'all bounce back and forth. And it's just like
we had a good time doing those.
It's got a harmony, man. You can just, between the two of you, it's like a barbershop quartet singing. It's just a harmony.
We went in there with no plan. We made that up at the breaks every time.
Guys, it's beautiful.
We never walked through the door with a plan.
And I don't let my new guys listen to you, because that'll let the cat out of the bag. And I tell them.
I'm going to tell you another story. A friend of mine tells a story. He's coming off a drunk one more time, and he's sitting on his bed with his face in his hands, thinking about his home group. And he's sitting there hating this one old SOB at his home group, when it occurs to him that all the men that old SOB is sponsoring staying sober. Mm. So he goes to a noon meeting and he finds the guy and he says, would you sponsor me? And the guy says, no, I won't. I don't work with losers. And they said, wait, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I agree to sponsor you. Do what I say, when I say, like I said, never argue with me. He said, yes, I will. I said, good. Shave your mustache. Meet me at the men's meeting tonight at 8 o'clock. I said, shave my mustache. I read the big book. There's no chapter to barbers. What does shave my mustache got to do with recovery? I said, it got nothing to do with recovery. But what makes me think I should waste my valuable time? When you just said you do what I say, when I say, like I say, and all I ask you to do is shave a mustache. We get into the step work, we'll be doing some things that look a little bit harder than shaving a mustache. Mm. I'm not sure if you're ready or not. I'll be at the men's meeting tonight at 8 o'clock, and walked away. Said he went home and thought about it, shaved his mustache, went to the men's meeting. That's his sobriety date. It's older than mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to do a couple of more pieces out of the book, and then I'm going to quit.
Awesome.
Page. So I took a meeting into a gated community one time. It was a state prison, and they had big books with stories. Are you familiar? Do you happen to know what the first three words on page 112 are?
No.
Read this book. And I use that. I'm leading, I think, 5 men's retreats this year, and that will be the first session at every retreat. Get out your big book. Give us the page number first. Read us a paragraph or less, and tell us why you read it. You got 3 minutes. We skip all over the book. It's magic. The old timers get to show off, and the newcomers get excited about the book. It's a double win. But I was doing a page 112 meeting in the state prison a number of years ago, page 456, which was actually written by a guy who was in a prison when he wrote this story. 5 lines from the bottom. A has accomplished so many things in my life today. It has given me my sanity and all-around sense of balance. Now, willing to listen and take suggestions, I've found the process of discovering who I really am begins with knowing who I really don't want to be. Mm. What the first 9 steps are about. Steps 4 and 5 are a snapshot of your life without God in it. That's what it was, and that's what it will be if you don't. Some people come to recovery because they feel the heat, others because they see the light. I'm a heat type. I came to save my job. And the heat will bring you, but it won't keep you. Yeah. The heat will cool off. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to develop a hunger for the light if you're going to stay.
I love that.
Please get into this work and do these things so that you can develop that hunger for the light. And I want to close with the last paragraph on 457 in the same story. From experience, I realized I cannot go back and make a brand new start, but through AA, I can start from now and make a brand new end.
Yeah.
It's been a joy.
Cool. Yeah, I have enjoyed it. It's such an honor, and to think, it's what I've learned from you can't be put in a bucket. I just, when they finally start listening to you and they get through this work and I say, okay, now you can listen. They figure it all out then, like where I got all that stuff. It sounds so cool. I've lost you again verbally. I've lost your audio.
Have you?
Just stay there for just a second. I heard everything until just now.
Yeah.
When I was talking about the
I've got one of
oh
the
my
old wood
gosh.
burning computers, and sometimes it sort of,
Wood burning. Yep. Yeah, I do. Just one more thing, just because it's more so to see what, I know what impact you're having on everybody, but what's happened to me. I listened to you and I heard some stuff, man, and I decided to start having a men's retreat down there at that place where I take the guys and every May, about 20 of us, that's about the right number for that facility, about half new guys and about half veterans, so that you get that mix in there. And we just have such a good time all weekend, cooking, eating. I got a little 1 acre pond, and we fish and we swim and do recovery. We play. I lost you again.
Try the page 112 meeting.
I'm going to. It's definitely on my list.
It's a great open.
Yeah.
It's a great open.
Yeah, I like it.
We
I just
open with
jotted it
that.
down.
We open with that, and we get someone to read Dr. Bob's last talk. And it really sets a beautiful tone.
To read it. It's out there printed someplace, a transcript.
Oh, yeah, and it's short.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll write that down too, because I'm
If
always
you
looking.
can't find it, get to me. I'll get it to you.
Okay. I went out and found your How to Cry paperwork from listening on the internet, and a few other things that you've talked about. And I was able to dig it all up out of the archives someplace. So, well, I love you. You've meant so much to me, and you've meant so much to all the guys I'm running around with. And it really is an honor to get a chance to sit down and talk to you for a little bit.
I get to do all kinds of things, and this is great fun. Thank you.
Yep. This is the way I get high today.
God bless and keep you.
Thanks, God.